and welcome to the Keep Learning podcast. My name is Alicia Siska.
And I'm Matthew Mesley.
And today we have a special guest for our conversation about what it means to be a student at university. He is charming, he is smooth, he's the silver tongue of our youth. He helps spouse leaders reach for a dream, but most luckily for us, he brings cakes to the team. A warm welcome to Josh Manning.
Well, thank you so much for the lovely poem and for having me. It's so lovely.
Of course, these cakes I only have a very vague memory of because
in another
we
world.
haven't been in the office.
And I've still not had cake, so
Exactly.
You retract that statement.
But it's a very important reputation to hold, Josh, so hold on to it.
I'll do my best.
Excellent. So shall we start with you telling us a little bit about your role at the university and what led you to it as well?
Absolutely. So I'm the peer learning graduate intern within our team, which is a lovely mouthful to have. What that basically means is I'm a recent graduate from the university. So I studied history and then a master's in history at the university, and came into our team to work on the peer learning programs, which is PALS and the Writing Cafe. The background to why I found myself in that role is, as a student, actually, it was Alicia who pushed me to become a Writing Cafe mentor.
Blame her.
I do. In my third year of my undergraduate course, peer learning wasn't something I was massively aware of in its formalized state at the university. I kind of had heard of it, but never really engaged with it.
So, just to clarify, I had nothing to do with you getting the job, yeah? I was not at the interview panel. I did not know anything about it. I only had a role in making you appreciate the Writing Cafe.
Absolutely. We do everything professionally, just to clarify. So receiving that kind of prod in the right direction to become involved and start making myself aware of peer learning and the values of it was transformational, I think, in my life and my degree. It made me aware of the multitude of different ways of appreciating and valuing and approaching academic writing, critical thinking, all of kind of the core aspects of our world, and really developed me as a person and as a writer myself, and I think was critical in me getting kind of where I did with my degrees, and getting the grades that I did. And kind of through that and the amazing contacts I built up with the team through working, I think as a partner to you, I never felt as a student worker lesser than you. I felt as part of the team and valued. Throughout, I kind of had the confidence when this job came up as for an intern role to put myself forward for it, and I felt that I could take the skills I'd started to develop and my experience as a student and kind of, I guess, apply them from the other side now.
That's so fab. Can I jump in, Alicia, before we talk a bit more about Josh's sort of role now? I just was really interested in why do you think you hadn't sort of thought about peer learning as much as a student, or was interested in it as much previously?
So I actually was already engaging in it, but not consciously. I just happened to already know students who were in the year above me. So I already effectively was in a peer learning group. I just didn't know that term really existed and what that meant. So it meant I effectively had my own dedicated PALS program amongst those around me, and were using, these people to share experiences and insights and what they would have done differently. And I think because I had it in such an informal setting, I never kind of thought to I guess become involved with the set forms that we have in the university ridiculously, because I would have benefited even more if I had. But it was that ignorance in a way, really.
Amazing. So how do you feel this state of ignorance became a state of enlightenment? And how have you changed the way you think, or how has your thinking changed about peer learning?
So it was during the kind of the Writing Cafe training where I kind of came in totally ignorant to the world and what it meant, and that experience totally transformed the way that I viewed the academic process as kind of a set state of rules that you have to both adapt yourself to, and kind of, I guess, understanding the capital that I had and what I brought to university and how I needed to further adapt that to meet the demands of the world, but also about how others have already done that, and how you can take so much from their experience in kind of making your life easier and more efficient. And it was just something that, say, in the context of writing, I'd never appreciated why I'd been told I had a good writing style, but I didn't know what that meant. And I was stupid enough not to follow up on those questions or compliments to really clarify what that meant. But through a peer learning process, you become aware of what works for others and start to kind of, it's almost like seeing through the matrix, I think of it, as you see the patterns in the way things work. And there is a kind of a commonality amongst all students, even if they approach things differently. That kind of highlights different ways of thinking, or even sometimes the same results, how they can be achieved in different ways. And I think that exposure to so many different ideas, values, and opinions does, it inevitably makes you reflect on your own and realize why you did things the way you did and why it maybe wasn't the best idea. And it totally kind of transformed the way I thought, in the sense of the planning I put into things. Before, I was kind of very ad hoc, off the wall. I just let things go as they did, and it kind of worked out, and that was fine. But it made me much more efficient, I think, in the way that I thought and the way I approached things, which I'm so grateful for, because it's vital in any job.
Yeah. What do you think is the kind of future of peer learning? Because what it reminds me a little bit of, because we talk a lot about peer learning, but sometimes it's a difficult message to get across to both students and staff, I suppose. But I don't know, do you know about University 42?
I don't, actually.
You don't? Okay.
No.
It's otherwise known as École 42, my really bad French. But it started as a French school, and then actually was adopted in America as well. And it was set up by a French billionaire. And the name, obviously, number 42 comes from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the answer to Life University and everything. But so the school is based completely on peer learning. There are no teachers, no lecturers. Everything is completely guided. Yes, everything is completely guided by the students. They create what they need. And basically, the school's president considers knowledge dangerous, because actually it doesn't prepare us for the world of the future, where people have to work together and think about how to solve world problems, etc., etc. So everything is graded by peers. Everything is self-organized. Everything is based on peer learning.
That's amazing. Sounds very utopian,
doesn't it? But it's been working since 2013, and it's terribly competitive, because they receive between 60 and 80,000 applications, but they only accept 1,000 students, because it's fully free as well. It's a free degree, but it's only for coding. So no history there.
That's incredible. And I think that is a utopian vision of peer learning. But I do think there is something there about the values being applied at all aspects and all levels that I feel is beginning to happen within our own small context, at least. I think that idea of seeing everyone as a peer that you can learn from, and I think that can occur between staff, and I think we do that really nicely within our team, having opportunities to learn and work with each other. Between staff and students, I think students seeing staff more as peers they can learn from, rather than they kind of godly figures like I did when I first started university, who I couldn't dare get anything wrong in front of, to each other, building stronger communities, which I think students have been starved for that, obviously, over the last year, being online and more distant in those communities. That I'd like to think it will become more embedded in courses themselves and in practices amongst students. And who knows, in 50 years' time, maybe none of us will be here and it will just be students doing their own podcast.
Yeah.
I was going to ask actually about sort of like the challenges of the last year. How do you think sort of peer learning has changed in terms of that? And do you think you'll sort of bring anything from the last year to, when things get back to normal?
I think peer learning's had to become more resilient over the last year. And by that, I think I mean our ultimately our ambassadors and our face of peer learning, which is our powers leaders and writing cafe mentors, have had to adapt far more quickly than they ever did to new situations and new demands of them. And I think we as a team have had to often be ignorant of the solution more so than we ever were, and be willing to take risks and let them lead on projects and see how that goes. And I'd love for that to continue. I love not knowing anything or being proven wrong and learning something new. And I'd like to think that's an ethos that absolutely is taken forward in our future programs and what we do in peer learning and beyond. And I think an aspect of that is, I think the digital world, it's so easy to keep adapting and evolving different processes and approaches. And I think ultimately digital elements of peer learning will be vital to continue to allow that to happen.
Okay, Josh. Now, I would like to really exploit the fact that you are a fairly recent graduate.
Okay.
and use your experience and your reflections in action and afterwards to tell us a little bit of, or share with us what you wish you had known as a student that would be useful for other students. But, obviously, there's a lot of advice out there, and I have actually looked at lots of websites, blogs, even UCAS advice for students, and I thought most of it is written by students themselves, but interestingly, much of it is very contradictory. So one blog says this, but another one says something else. So I wonder if we could verify some of it and kind of play a game of true or not true, elaborate.
Sounds amazing.
Okay, so the first one, I'm going to start with slightly controversial ones.
Okay.
So the first one, I found probably the most controversial one. So let's just jump into it. Your grades aren't fixed. If you advocate enough for yourself, lecturers will boost them.
Ooh, that is, incredibly controversial. I think there is a slight truth to that.
Ooh, okay.
In the sense that I think the more you start to communicate with your lecturers in particularly seminar groups where you have more time to articulate your views and ideas with them, the more that not only do your ideas become shaped by potentially their sensibilities and attitudes that will flow into your writing or assignments that can potentially get higher marks because you're echoing their thoughts, even if it's subconsciously. But I think more importantly, they begin to understand the way you think and articulate yourself. And even if it's subconsciously, they will probably recognize that when marking your work. And maybe you'll get some leniency in that they recognize what you mean, even if it's not quite perfect. So I do think there's a relationship there that you can build with academics that may help you. I could be totally wrong though. And I'm sure
that's actually a great answer, because what you're not saying that once you receive a grade, you can then change it, you can influence that grade. Because I think that's what that advice was.
Okay.
Do you feel that this is possible?
Not really, because I think there has to be a process of accepting whatever grades you get.
Confession, I have done that once.
Oh, okay.
I have changed a mark. I changed a mark from 59 to 60. And it's the only time I did it in an entire sort of 10 years of marking. But I do think there is something that lecturers should take on board, that it doesn't, it's not necessarily the final perhaps mark that it could be, or that maybe when you were marking it you were in a particular mood, or does that make sense? So I'm not completely anti it, but I do think then it's interesting, like which students are more likely to do that. And I think it will be people who are more privileged, who have more kind of like confidence perhaps in engaging with their lecturers, and then so there's a bit of unfairness, I think, perhaps with that.
I think I would add another point to it from the perspective of a lecturer, that if a student challenges a grade, the problem is that I'm okay to review it, do it again, but the risk is that actually the final revised grade may be lower and not higher.
Definitely, but yeah.
So it's always a risky business. Okay, great. So the second one, you should decide what you want to do with your life before choosing your course.
Definitely disagree. I didn't know that this world existed before choosing my course. I think if you have done so and you're choosing a very specific course, something even computing as open as that is, it is setting you down a certain path that clearly you enjoy and have an affinity for. There is nothing wrong with that. But I think a course is an opportunity to expose yourself to new ideas and worlds you didn't know existed. And through that exposure, inevitably changes will occur. And they may not, I guess it's not inevitable, but there is always that chance that your views change, what you think is possible will change. And I think going in open to those ideas, you'll take so much more from your course and be more engaged in different opportunities than going in a closed-minded or through a closed-minded approach. I think to give real context to it, I was absolutely convinced I was going to become a dentist or a dental hygienist before coming to university. I don't know
why I'm finding that so funny.
It's just, I guess, so against the world we're in. It's almost like torturing people versus helping them. You're a bit of a torturer as a dentist, maybe.
There are good and nice dentists that help people as well.
There are, yeah.
Let's be fair.
And things didn't work out, and I ended up going through clearing, doing history because I loved the topic, and I didn't know what that meant for a job or a future, but I found myself so open to ideas on the course, and I think ironically more willing to embrace different views or adapt myself than some of my peers who had better grades and knew they were coming to do history. So I think that openness is vital.
That's a great answer. So the third one is you can work less hard and instead spend more time with your friends.
I think that is such an interesting one, because it's something that I now say about my first year is, or maybe I put too much effort in and I could have spent more time partying because it doesn't actually add up to that much of your degree. But I think what you're doing in that first year is learning to fail and succeed and learning to adapt and grow. And I think the more effort you can put in that first year to give yourself a chance to do that, the more successful you'll be down the line in your degree. And it also, going back to peer learning, time with your friends doesn't have to equal not working as well. Some of the best sessions I had, with my friends was we'd meet up, even in the library at 8 o'clock in the morning, we'd work till 1 and then we'd go to the pub in the afternoon. And there was that balance there for us. And it meant we were sharing ideas, we were still engaging in our course and working together. But it is something I think we all look back and think I could have done things differently. I could have been lazier, but would you have chosen to at the time? Probably not.
And I think you mentioned the key word. It's all about balance, right? Finding the balance, knowing, that there's work to do. You have committed to a certain outcome of it, and therefore there's time for work and time for play.
Absolutely.
Work hard, play hard.
And I think sometimes if you put a bit more effort in the first year, then you can relax a little bit more perhaps in the second and third year, because you're not having to basically learn the sort of disciplines language in the second year.
That first year can be quite crucial, right?
Yeah, it can. I'll never forget a seminar I was in my third year, where someone turned around and just kind of frustratedly blurted out, "What even is critical analysis? I've never understood it." And it was kind of almost too little too late, because this was right into the depth of the third year. And I spoke to the person who it was and chatted them through it, but it took 2 to 3 hours of working with them to help them understand. But if that had been something they were aware of and put effort into from the start, it is that, I guess, culmination of effort makes things so much easier down the line. I totally agree, Matthew.
Freshers' flu is not a myth.
So true. I in my first year, as part of the history course, we go to London, which is an amazing trip of taking in the culture and kind of getting to know the course as well. And one of my friends, bless him, had been a little bit ill before we went, and so I took him out for some food because he hadn't eaten in days and because he'd been too unwell, and got some shopping for him. And unbeknownst to me, I'd picked up what was fresh as flu from him. So on my final day of the London trip, I remember waking up and not really knowing who I was or where I was, and being out of it and losing a day. And I have kind of no memory of the week after that. I was so ill. So yeah, something to be prepared for. The one definite benefit of online learning is the lack of flu.
And pre-COVID, everyone used to go into their seminars and lectures when they were still ill as well, didn't they? And I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, I suppose, COVID gave us a better understanding of viruses and how they work.
Stay away.
May face masks long continue is all I can say.
Oh dear. Okay, next one is a more serious one. Do not underestimate the skill of time management.
It's so vital. I think the thing is you're going to make mistakes and that's fine. I remember my first year remembering about an essay due on a Monday on a Saturday afternoon, not having started it at all. It was only a 1,000 word essay, but there was the sheer dread set into me and the panic. And I vowed never to make that same mistake, having gone through that experience. So I think it's almost, in a weird way, a good experience to go through it once as a student because you learn your lessons. But it's such a vital skill to build because it comes into every facet of what you do. If you don't factor in enough times to do your reading or engage properly with your lectures and seminars, then you are kind of in debt of time for catching up with those, and that's then building up on you. And I think it just leads to stress. I think, like we said earlier, that balance of work hard, play hard, and balance that between different months where you can do some things less and more is so vital.
I think we should add chill hard to this as well.
I like that. Yeah.
It's very intense. It sounds very stressful. Work hard, play hard. What about relaxation time?
Yeah.
Okay, next one is showing up matters.
I think it does. I think that there is a bit of a myth around the idea if you attend, you've put effort in. And I don't agree with that in the sense that even if you've gone and sat in a lecture theatre and then been on your phone for an hour, you've not put any effort in. You might as well have stayed home at that point. But I do think that regularly attending, because it's an opportunity for you to engage other students, share different ideas, and engage your academics who are such a font of knowledge and ideas. And ultimately, I think, I'm sure you'd agree with this, Alicia, they want you to engage them. You know, you're not stood there for your own benefit. You want the students to learn from you and you from them if when possible. And I think that engagement is so vital, and only through being there do you get those moments. And I think you can never quantify which lecture will be useful by the title of it. You can only go and find out because you don't know when that kind of moment is going to hit you. I know
there are some surprises, right?
Definitely. Like, I had no idea what, for example, my dissertation topic would be for my third year, and it just happened. The seminar I went to struck me, and then it all kind of snowballed from there, and I ended up doing that. If I hadn't turned up that week, it would have all turned out differently. So I think, you know, you've got to be there to benefit from any experience.
I think we are, I mean, from my generation, it was a bit different in the sense that there were so fewer hours of contact time, whereas today there is a lot more. Like, if I missed Wednesday morning, that would be my entire weeks of lectures and seminars sometimes. So I think it is a lot different, and I like that point about, you know, sometimes you know, you might be in a lecture but you might not be taking it in. So yeah, I think that's. I
remember when I started working at the university, I just came from America, studying at an American university, and gosh, it was just such a profound difference because it was actually mandatory to attend classes at an American university, and it wouldn't even occur to me not to come to class because I could be in real trouble. I mean, real trouble, like be expelled if I missed a number of classes. And even though some of them maybe did not interest me as much as others, actually they still contributed to who I became as a student, scholar, etc. And had I had that choice of not coming to class, I think I would have missed out on a lot. So it was really difficult for me to understand that students would not come to class and say, oh, I'm not interested in it. And I was always thinking, but I put so much effort into developing this class.
Discouraging sometimes.
Yeah, and it's part of a series of the engagements, and one adds up to another and builds on another. And it's difficult to kind of completely divorce them from something else. So
I think you made a really good point as well about that idea. If you have kind of preconceived ideas about what you do and don't enjoy, actually challenging yourself to work out why you don't enjoy it by engaging with it is so important and will develop you. So you don't have to love every single topic you do at university, even if it's one you kind of suffer through a little bit. Understanding why it is you dislike it can help you avoid jobs in that field, or, you know, it helps, I think, grow you and develop your knowledge even still.
I know that sometimes I remember students wouldn't come to a seminar because they hadn't done the reading, and so they felt, you know, they were nervous about sort of talking about things that they hadn't read about. But I would always be, I'd much prefer you come, and then, you know, we can talk, I can still fill you in on, you know, the basics, and you'll still get something out of it, I think. So,
and plus, I think, you know, lecturers are quite understanding people.
Yeah.
They have been students at some point as well. And therefore, you know, I don't think there's ever that expectation that you're always 100% prepared, right? That 1 week you're active and contributing, another week, you know, you get a free pass because maybe you're going to be a little bit more passive because that's not quite your forte, or whatever it is. There are multiple reasons why someone is engaged or less engaged in a particular week, but being there is also for the benefit of other students, because there's a difference if you have 15 people in class versus 5, and especially if those 5 haven't read, it becomes a little bit it just, I think, impoverishes the difference, the experience of everyone involved, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, we kind of agree on this one. But the next point is the library is your best friend. How do you feel about that?
I think it is, and I think learning to make use of it however works for you is key. So I was never a student to do my work in the library. It was too busy for me, and I preferred, you know, being in my room and like having that space to myself. But that access to knowledge is so vital. And again, I wouldn't name names, but I did have a fellow course mate who didn't take a book out until their 3rd year. And they suffered for it, you know, they just didn't have that appreciation of the wider context. They would use other online sources, which can be great in a fix like Google Scholar or Google Books, but they never give you that full appreciation of the text or the context of what you're looking at. So I think, you know, learning how to use the library, I think this would be my most vital message of make it work for you. Don't feel like you've got to be there working with people around you if that doesn't suit you, but definitely make use of it in some capacity that benefits you.
I do hear lots of stories from students, though, who spend a lot of time in the library and feel like this is the only space they can work in, and who have found COVID really difficult to deal with because obviously access to that space was quite limited, and not just because of you know, the restrictions on access per se, but limitations on time. So you could only maybe use an hour or 2 hours in a day instead of, you know, just kind of bunkering up somewhere in the corner for the whole day. In fact, I hope that students I'm going to mention, without mentioning the names, wouldn't mind me saying that we had students a couple of years ago who had tattooed the coordinates of the library on their ankles as a kind of, you know, commemoration. Yeah, it's a keepsake of their best memory, their best kind of, this was the locus of their activity, their space, which they will take with them to the grave, I suppose.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, next one is something that you might have a lot to say about. There is plenty of support around, you just need to find it.
It's so true. And I think my kind of first gut reaction to that is using or making use of support isn't a sign of weakness or that you're struggling or negativity. It's a sign of your desire to succeed. And that was something that I really didn't quite understand when I first came to university, you know, coming from a standard, you know, state school system where if you made use of extra support, it was generally seen as you were struggling or there was a negative connotation to it. Actually, the support is there to enhance your degree. And if you are struggling, of course, it's there for that as well. But I think ultimately it's there to support every level of student, to those who are new into academia and are just finding their feet, through to those who feel experienced, that they know everything, and sometimes maybe even just want confirmation of, is that correct? So that rather than needing to learn something new, but they still might. And that's something I'm really proud of our team and of the university, is the wide range of support that we have. So we've touched on peer learning, of the writing cafe, which is currently a digital space, but also in theory a physical space in different worlds, that students can just drop into without kind of any expectations on them, or having to meet any requirements. Bring a piece of writing or a plan of writing or a past piece of writing and just talk to someone who, although they have like a series of experience and training on academic writing, also aren't experts as well. So I think it breaks down those barriers and allows for really useful conversations about what it means to write at an academic level, what that can look like, different conventions, and is really, for me, a confidence building activity more than anything else. And I think that's the same with the open hours I know that you both offer. I think you offered so much more nuance and perspective to those students on those courses than we do in the writing cafe. I think it's another really important touch point to get different minds to meet with them and expand your own horizons and develop that knowledge. And, you know, I think beyond the academic sphere as well, with PALS, which whilst academic is holistic, as well as, you know, all the other offerings in different student services and all that kind of support, you're paying for it, is what I would say as well. You know, your money is going towards these services. You've already paid for them. Why not make use of them?
Like that.
Great. How about this one? Cook.
Yes, I totally agree. I think everyone should learn to cook and be passionate about food, but that's my opinion. I appreciate some people won't be. But I think if you can use cooking as a means of winding down for the day, or put your passion into it if it's food you love or as comfort, and do that with a group of other people and make it a social activity if you want to, or, you know, it can be individual and just soothing as well. But I think it has a routine in your day that can be really beneficial. And ultimately, it will save you money as a student, which is so vital. And it just tastes better as well. Let's be honest. If you learn to cook well, it's always going to be better.
I'm just thinking of some of really bad meals that I cook for myself.
But there are also so many fun cookbooks for students, right? Meals in one pot, everything to do with pancakes, you know.
Exactly. And you can still be lazy with it. You know, one pot cooking, it's not difficult. It just, you know, is combining flavors.
I think I was put off tuna and pasta for life by being a student.
Yeah. Beans, baked potatoes and beans.
My lowest point was rice and mayonnaise.
Oh, that's a dish.
Amazing. But, you know, thanks to your you're taking this advice on board, we now had these cakes, and there was more. What did you have? Samosas? Was it samosas you brought?
Yeah, it was.
These are higher level.
Exactly. It's, you know, and I think there's a joy to it, sharing it with people, you know, being able to give that gift to others, and those can be housemates as students or course mates. There's just, you know, lots to be taken from it, I really think.
Yeah, this point actually links with a more serious and a little bit kind of sobering thought. Your student loan is not free money.
Yeah, it's so true.
That's the first point on the UCAS.
Really? I'm kind of not surprised, because there certainly is that view. And, you know, there's that temptation in Freshers Week to think you've got this magic loan that you can just splurge on whatever you want. And you need to learn to budget for your own well-being, because if you don't look after yourself, everything else will suffer. You know, your mental health, your academic work, your social life as well, which I think is so vital. For me, that also meant working alongside university, which, you know, brings its own stresses, but also I think having a professional world to work in, it was only retail, but a different environment, made me love and appreciate my academia so much more, and gave me, you know, different views and different environments to help me grow in. And I think university, I think no matter the age of those going on a course, is a developmental concept and position. I think it's something that is a real stage in your life where you're given the opportunity to rethink things and adapt and grow, so make the most of it.
So we have two more.
Okay.
One is, I think, very important, and you probably will echo this. I wish, so it's more of a regret from someone. I wish I took better care of my mental health and accepted that it's okay to feel overwhelmed sometimes, and it's okay not to know things.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that it's so easy to come with university with these ideas that you're meant to be a ready-made model student. And I have a really vivid memory of being sat in a seminar, and it could only have been about a month or two into the course, and they were talking about Machiavellian politics, and I didn't have a clue who Machiavelli was, what Machiavellian concepts were, and I just sat there panicked that I was an idiot, that I just clearly wasn't up to the level of everyone else. I just didn't know it, and just let kind of the dread sink in, and just sat there quietly thinking, you're useless, what do you know? And if I just said something then and try and challenge that thought, it would have changed. And I think having those realistic expectations is vital. I'm a kind of a sucker for putting myself down and being really pressured on myself, and that does build up, and it definitely did for me over the course of my studies to have. And I had kind of anxiety issues and some depressive issues as well, and that was nothing to do with the course itself, but the way I reacted to it. So I think understanding the way your mind works, and I think being really aware of that is vital. Knowing what you can control and what you can't as well, so you can learn when to worry and when not to. I think being really proactive with it is really important, and that's part of what a university experience is facing new difficulties and growing through them, as well as, you know, using again those sources there, the wellbeing teams at universities, mental health support. There's no shame in using it. That's why it's there, because people do struggle with it more than ever. And I do think it's vital that there are conversations like this that promote a normalization that it can happen. It's fine if it does happen, but it's about dealing with it.
I love that. I think it's sometimes also like students, including myself on this, we put a lot of expectations on ourselves, don't we? When we start a degree, you know, we've been told we might have to get a 2-1 or a first, or you know, immediately, and if we don't, then we're like, oh, we're not this and also it might be because we're coming from a background where we were getting high marks beforehand as well, so it can be stressful to not always be the top of your class, perhaps, too.
But it's also vital to have that confidence that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask for clarification. Yeah, it's okay not to know things, because this is why you're here, to learn. Yeah, and therefore you're not here to demonstrate that you know everything already, because that just wouldn't make any sense. Yeah, the idea is to work with what you already know and build on that and expand it. So asking questions, you know, who was Machiavelli? Why should I know that? Yeah, can you give me some context? I mean, I would love a student to ask that question in class, instead of me thinking, you know, I don't want to, you know, I'm making an assumption, using that word, but then at the same time, what if all the students know it and they will feel like I'm, you know, being patronizing, but by explaining too much. So there's always this kind of little game of what we know, what we don't know, but accepting that it's okay not to know, I think, is really, really important. And that goes not just for students, because, you know, you go to grad school and you feel even more of that pressure, to know things, and you feel even more intimidated to ask a question, because you feel like, by this time, by this stage in my education, I should definitely know. I'm not going to ask that question. So actually giving yourself the right to explore, to find out from people who are there for exactly that reason.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the last one. Time speeds up at university.
That's I love that statement. I really do think it does. I think that the first year it can feel at times kind of endless in the sense that you're not necessarily always used to the rapid kind of rate, not that it is, but of assessments throughout the year, and it can always feel like there's always something new to do, and therefore the year kind of extends out with loads of tasks, and you get into the second year, and within a few weeks you hit a point where you're nearly halfway through your degree and someone's going to tell you that, and you just kind of panic a little bit after that point when you hit that mid stage of second year and realize the dream's almost over in a way. And it does seem to run away from you from there. So I think, making use of the university in all aspects, the societies and the students' union, and really engaging in everything you want to as soon as you can is so vital. Because I did this in first year, like, I'll do it next year because there is another year, but you can only say that for so long.
Yeah, that's great. I think this is a great moment for you to tell us and show us your object and tell us what it means to you.
Okay, so I've brought you a box.
Ooh.
But inside the box there is more. So this is a chess set.
Oh, beautiful.
It comes from Greece, I know that much. I bought it when I was younger, maybe about 9, on holiday there. I can't remember which Greek island, but I think it might be Corfu. It's all kind of hand carved out of wood, beautifully made. But the reason I've picked it isn't necessarily anything to do with the make or the look of it at all. But I think in a weird way, the university experience can be kind of likened to playing chess.
Okay.
The rules and the goals of chess and of going to university to get a degree, I think, are pretty clear. We all know why we do those things. So to chess, it's to take the other person's king. University, it's to get a degree to develop your knowledge. But actually, knowing the strategies to implement and what tools to use to succeed is a bit of a mystery. If you just gave someone this chessboard, sat them down in front of it and asked them to win a match alone, it's highly unlikely that they'd be able to. And I think in a similar way, if a student kind of approaches a degree alone and unthinkingly and just thinks that they will succeed by happen chance, it isn't likely to. However, if that person seeks support, practices and works on it, and speaks to the people around them to get support, that kind of chance of succeeding not only increases, but I'd say consistently increases. And kind of being proactive to get that support, that ultimately is the sign of success and moving forward, and would help you succeed both at chess, which admittedly I'm terrible at, so it's a terrible analogy in that sense, but hopefully in a degree also. So there we go.
Love that. I think you might have won the best object of the week, actually.
Oh, okay.
Really,
It's really a beautiful analogy. Yes.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I also want to play you at chess now as well. So.
Ooh, okay.
You started something. We should have a tournament.
We should.
So before we let you go, could we ask maybe for the final piece of wisdom?
Okay, so there are a few ideas going around my mind, but I think this one stood out to me, which is, I think, when you start a degree, everything is so overwhelming. And I think when you get that first assessment and the feedback on, it can feel like it makes or breaks your degree in some ways. But I'd say that the level you start at isn't an indicator of where you'll finish. And that can be both if you get a really strong early start to university and do really well, or if you struggle a little bit. I think you'll ultimately improve over the course of your university experience and academic life through keep working at what you're doing, making use of the resources around you, challenging your ideas by working with others, and that can, will lead you to the path that you want to be on. And it doesn't matter that you don't start there, because that's the point of a degree. And I think we all think that you have to be a certain level to go to university, and that's got to kick in from the start. But it's a growing process, and I think the sooner that you can learn that, the more painless it is, and the sooner you learn to engage with it and use it as a developmental experience, the better it becomes.
Amazing. Matthew, would you like to add your own word of wisdom to this?
Not after that. Anything will be rubbish in comparison. So I think I'm going to leave it with Josh's comment.
I think I would just add I will take that risk and add just one small thing that I think Josh is saying, but maybe not as directly. I would say to all the students, you deserve to be here and you should never feel like you don't. And once you accept it, it's your place, it's your space, you can then explore and make the most of it.
Beautifully summarized, yeah.
Well, I think it's a great way to finish our discussion. So thank you so much, Josh, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been such fun as well.
It was, yeah. And to our listeners and those who watch us, thank you for spending this time with us. And feel free to subscribe to the podcast and comment or ask questions or propose topics that you care about.
And review us too.
Yes, this one too. Until next time.
Keep learning.
Bye.